most people are so afraid of the change. They're so afraid to let go of something. And I remember when the realization was coming to me, there was a profound grief that my youth is gone. Like I'm not young anymore.
I grew up watching women and my mom being behind men, not beside their husbands. And that always created some sort of, not anger in a traumatic way, but like I don't like that. I don't want to be behind my husband. I want to be beside him. So that it took me like a while until Lead with Lipstick came to.
And how long have you had that?
Next month is gonna be 1 year, and like it's been such like a great experience for me, because then I'm connecting also with my femininity through connecting with other women.
So beautiful.
Yeah, and so it's been like a lovely journey. And so many people told me it's such a serious topic, like such a niche topic, it's not gonna work. I'm like, I'm gonna make it work.
What's serious and what niche? Which topic?
Women, imagine.
Oh, come on.
Imagine.
No.
And so in 6 months, we hit 20 million views. How about that?
That's amazing. Well done.
I literally like announced it everywhere to everyone who told me that that's not gonna work.
Amazing.
That means people want us to talk about certain topics related to women. And so that was a clear indication that I'm on the right path. I'm discussing the right topics. I didn't want it to be like an angry feminist show. It's not that. And mentioning that there are parts of feminism that I don't agree with 100%, or let's say the Western concepts of feminism. So yeah, that's how we came about the show. With my experience in social media and content creation, I was able also to make the journey of reaching those 20 million views faster. Yeah. So for those who don't know how I met you, I was walking by the beach, and I swear 2 days before that, or a day before that, I was thinking of you. I'm like, I'm gonna reach out to Dr. Saliha. And then I'm walking on the beach and I see you sitting there.
You should have asked for something else.
Actually, it was just perfect timing, and I'm like, and I went up to you. I was just so embarrassed, but I'm like, this is a sign. I have to speak to her. But you were so sweet and so kind, and you told me that, yeah, definitely you're on board. And this has been since last year. We've been.
It was October, end of October.
Yeah.
I remember I was on the beach because what was happening in Palestine, I really found a lot of my grounding, what is happening in Palestine, but what had just started, in its most recent ways. And I was finding a lot of my grounding at the beach. It was hot still, and I remember, and I was like, oh no, I'm not here. I can't see anyone, because I was crying, but it was fine. It was good.
Yeah, I definitely sensed the grief, but I didn't connect until I saw your stories that's where you felt grounded. I'm like, oh my God, I ruined it for her. I ruined her privacy.
I appreciated you coming up, and I think you do have to take those moments as signs.
Yeah.
And I was okay with that. Maybe not everyone would be, but I was okay with it.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you.
When we started communicating, it was very clear that we wanted this time to be targeted to women who are wearing multiple hats, and they're probably exposed to burnout. They are juggling between being mothers and wives, and also climbing the career ladder, and that's why they're burning out faster. And I think I read a study where it said that women experience burnout more than men. Is that true? Do you see that in your work when women come to the lighthouse and express their burnout?
Yes. So women do experience burnout more than men, and women leaders in the workplace experience burnout more than men. And that has to do a lot with the emotional load that we carry. So it's not that we're just doing the task. We are also holding a lot of the mental and emotional load that comes with our work, but also our family. I think women, and I might get the age bracket wrong, but it's about between ages 49 to 56. They have the highest rate of depression out of all age groups and,
Wow.
And all populations. And that is because it's a stage of life, it's an age of life, but even women younger, they hold a lot, not just within their workplace, but also within their personal lives. They hold the maternal mental load. So when are the doctor's appointments? Who is their best friend? Did they do their homework? What are they eating for dinner? A lot of that is still held by women in many families. And even when men are supportive, when husbands are supportive, that's what they are. They are supportive. They're not actually the primary, they are the support. And so the coordination of the care is still held by the mother. And if you're not a mother, you're still a daughter, a friend, a sister, a wife, and you hold these different positions within a community, and all of those roles that you play have an emotional and mental load alongside. And women tend to engage more in that realm than men, and so there is more burnout. They allow themselves to feel more, and I want to make that very clear that this is not about, what women do more or women feel more. No, our society, patriarchal values has conditioned men to do more and to fight more and to earn more and to provide more, where women are to be the keepers of feelings and family and emotion and that realm. But now women are crossing over to be in the workforce while they're doing this. So of course they're holding a lot more. And we're hoping that as we progress, that men will cross over into holding a lot of the mental and emotional. And we are making great strides in that space also.
Yeah. Obviously, the solution is not to stop caring and not feel and like withdraw all the responsibilities that are related to family and that involves emotions. So how can women who are juggling so many things all at the same time, and there's also that perception that they have to perfect everything and be perfect at everything, how can they deal with burnout without withdrawing, without saying to their family, I don't have time to deal with this, or I can't deal with this?
Yeah, I think when you come to that place, you're already in the danger zone. You're in the red zone when you say, I can't deal with this. And there are people who choose to just not engage, they choose to not relate, they choose to not hold things within their families. There are women who do that. But I think that if it's in your nature to care, then to stop yourself from caring is going to be more exhausting than to care but do it well. And so it's going to be very important. I think one of the most important skills a woman who is a working woman, or any woman I would say, they can learn is to learn how to read their own energy and to know what their capacity is. I look on social media, this woman, she's doing this, and this mother, she went and picked up her kids, and she cooked this meal, and I feel guilty because I'm not doing that. No, we don't do this. We don't compare ourselves to other people because we don't know what support they have, what kind of meal it actually was in the end, or what kind of responsibilities she's holding, what kind of work does she do, how much does it take from her, what is she learning, what is she grieving, what is she holding. We don't know any of that. So knowing your own self and knowing, okay, what is on my plate, how big is my plate, because depending on where you are in your life, whether it's an illness, whether the plate can shrink down to like a quarter plate. And what can I put on this plate versus what can I put on the bigger plate? Because there are times where you have more. So knowing what the size of your plate is in this phase, and I would say reevaluate every quarter. Where am I at in this quarter? Where am I at in this quarter? Because people are like, I know what my capacity is. But I was never like this. I feel so tired now. Okay, when was the last time you checked your capacity? oh, but when I was 20 and they're like 40, it's like, no, you have to update your iOS system almost on a quarterly basis, and definitely during every major life transition, when you get married, when you have children, when you become a caregiver to your parents, elderly parents, when you go through a divorce, when there is a death, anytime there is a transition, you've got to look back at your capacity. And when you know your capacity, you know what to put on your plate. And the things you put on your plates are your obligations and your dependents first. First, put that. And part of your obligations has to do with your physical and mental health. It is an obligation. It is not a, oh, I'll do self-care because it'll be nice. No. If you fall apart, everything falls apart around you. So one of the obligations and non-negotiables that goes on the plate is, when will I exercise? When will I sleep? When will I eat healthy? Like, it has to go on that plate. And if that compromise, if a project comes along that is super wow, and you say, wait, I don't have any space on my plate, and the only space I can take is out of my exercise, I'm going to say no to the project, because right now I don't have space. So this is where most people get FOMO, or they feel like I'm going to become irrelevant, but you have to constantly be updating your plate, and your plate will grow and get smaller through different stages and phases in your life. This is where the updating has to happen.
Does that slow down their progress in terms of their career when they know their obligations? And how can they define their obligations as well? Because as you said, everything is just so like attractive to say yes to. So it becomes so confusing to know what your obligations are.
Yeah, this is a great question. And I thought that was pretty obvious, but I don't think it's as obvious. Obligations are, if I don't do it, it will not get done, and it will cost me a relationship or my job or some part of my livelihood or my relationships. That is an obligation. I have an obligation in most of my roles. What obligation do I have as a daughter, as a wife, as a mother, as a coworker, as a friend, as a sister? What are the obligations? And I'm going to start from the dependents and work my way out. Who are my dependents? What depends on me? If I don't press this button, it doesn't get done. And there are people in my work, for example, my clients, they depend on me. If I don't do a talk, or if I don't do this podcast, you're not depending on me, right? Yeah. Even though I made a commitment to you in November, and then I had to push it out, and then I made a commitment to you in February, and I had to push it out, you are not dependent on me. There were people that were dependent on me, and at that time I needed to tend to that, and everything else will get pushed out. Now, my siblings, my friends, I will be informing them, listen guys, it's time that I buckle down. My dad, my mom, my kids, they're right here. And I live with my parents, which is why I'm saying they are my dependents in that sense. God keep them healthy, but I have to tend to them. They're in my home. And so how do I first tend to that? And do I have any space left after I take care of my physical health and my sleep and my work and the things that need to get done at work? There are things that are important, but not urgent or not important at all. So those are things, like that Eisenhower, grid that they call. Yeah. That's going to become very important. But everything these days feels urgent. Yeah. And everything these days feels important, but it's not. Is it your livelihood? Yes, then do it. There are some people who make their livelihood out of public speaking. They don't have a choice to not show up to a public talk. I don't have that. I don't make my livelihood from public speaking. Yeah. And so I can actually say, you know what? I can't do it in April, but I'll be able to come to you in May. If they are flexible, great. If they're not, I lose that opportunity, but I don't overextend myself. Of course, there are times where I have overextended myself 1 week, but then I recover the following week. So it's always about where's my recovery at? Where's my recovery at? And how quickly am I recovering? And when there are times, for example, grief, whether it's a collective grief, whether it's a personal grief, your plate becomes very small and the dependents become more needy. So it's really a very small capacity that I have, because I've got to help my daughter through her grief. I've got to help my husband through his grief. I've got to be the emotional regulator for that family. So that capacity becomes very small. At that point, everything else goes off, which is a project that would be a good, really cool thing to do. It's postponed at that point. So obligations are, you cannot live, or your relationships will not be able to go on unless you do this. Now, I will say that with relationships, dependents are very important, and then you must tell your friends. So if, for example, I'm a friend, if I want to be a good friend, I'm going to tell the people in my life, and I'm going to say, hey, listen, I'm going through a very difficult time right now. They'll say, oh, what can I do? I don't need you to do anything. If I need you, I will call you. But just understand that if I'm not checking in on you, it's because I'm really occupied right now. I'm totally preoccupied with this current crisis I'm in. And it takes 4 or 6 weeks where I'm back online and I'm ready to go back and be friends again, and show up as a friend again. But just so they know that I'm not like ghosting them or not acknowledging them, so they know what I'm holding. Now, in that time period, sometimes my friend also has a crisis. Now what do? I think she has to be an adult and I have to be an adult. We have to be understanding that we cannot be there for each other in the way we would have been if we were both not holding a crisis. And this is where understanding and compassion and sacrifice come into a relationship, and no guilt.
Yeah.
I think guilt is why are we feeling guilty?
Yeah.
Well, you are only feeling guilty if you are comparing yourself to someone else, or if you don't know your capacity. If you know you're doing the best you can, then there is no guilt. You will not know if you're doing the best you can until you do a proper assessment of what you can do. And then you say, I literally have no time. And then someone says, why aren't you being there for me and you're making me feel guilty? This is how I spend my time. This is what's going on with me right now. I don't feel guilty. I feel clear that I'm not abandoning you. I'm just very preoccupied with the people that depend on me.
And what do you do with the friendships that when you're in that situation with them, they take it personally that you haven't been there for them?
Well, then they're not very understanding friends. And they're not being adults in a friendship. You're a grown-up.
Yeah.
You are a grown-up. That means you are responsible for your own life.
Yeah.
Friends are there to support you. They're not there to do your life for you. You know, the idea that your friend will be there 24/7, no, they won't. Friends have a life, friends have work, friends have commitment, friends have energy capacities, friends have grief, friends have pain.
Yeah.
They cannot be there for you 24/7. And this idea that they will be this benevolent, all-giving, all-present, it's not realistic. And this is where I think a lot of people are in adult bodies, but we have very childlike psychology. We expect our husband to be there for us all the time. No, the husband also has a life.
Yeah.
He also has problems. He also has burdens. Grow up and own your own life, and then rely on each other, count on each other, depend on each other, be there for each other, which is very different than do everything for me and be there for me all the time. What is this expectation? Where did it come from? And if anyone has that expectation of me, then I will surely correct them and tell them they are mistaken. I will surely tell them, I cannot be what you need me to be, honey.
Yeah.
I am not this ever-present, ever-giving being for anyone. Because
Yeah.
my kids have to know I cannot be that for them. My husband, everyone in my life knows that. So you must know that too.
Yeah, that's very beautiful. And how do you see when women reach that burnout and they deal with it differently? They deal with it as they probably stop answering their parents' phone calls, they stop showing up to family gatherings because they're career seems to them that it's their priority, so they disengage with anything that can be emotional or triggering. And so how do you see that reflecting maybe on their health, their mental health? And do you agree with that, going that direction?
If you're going to be like that, then make a commitment to that way. But you can't pick and choose. You can't pick and choose when you're going to show up for people. I just don't believe in that. I think it's selfish. You can't say, oh, I'm too tired right now and I'm too exhausted right now, so I'm not going to show up for my people. No, you have a duty to take care of yourself so that you can be in relationship with people. Relationship means two-way. Now, with friends, going back to the friends, I can say, listen, right now I'm in crisis mode. For 4 to 6 weeks, I will not be as present. So I might not go out for dinner, but I'm still checking in on them. I'm still calling them and having a 15-minute phone call. We're still present in each other's life. We're still sharing. But I'm not going to be as present as I would be if this crisis was not going on or if I was not burnt out. Okay? Let's say I burnt out. And there are 2 times in my life I have, because I don't learn from the first time. I was like, maybe that didn't happen, but no, it did. And when I say burnt out, I'm talking flat. I'm not talking 1 weekend of recovery. I'm talking 6 weeks of recovery, complete emotional, physical exhaustion. And that has happened to me twice in my life. In that time period, what is my obligation when I am in a relationship? My obligation is to communicate.
Yeah.
Listen, I burned out. I extended myself. I'm exhausted. I can't make it to that lunch on Friday. I'm depleted. But I still have to talk to my parents. I still have to talk to my siblings. I still have to engage. I cannot disappear for 6 weeks and then come back online and then expect everybody to embrace me. So this is where communication becomes very important, because I am in relationship to people. When you are in relationship, that means you are bound to another person. And that means you have an obligation to that other person. What that obligation is can be redefined through different stages. For example, when someone gives birth, you don't expect her to come hang out with you. Why? Because we have a schema for, okay, when someone has birth, you give them at least 6 weeks, if not, 3 months, to just do you, and then tell me what you need, okay? We don't say, well, you weren't there for me. Why weren't you there for me during your birth? We don't think like that.
Yeah.
So we need certain models, mental models, for when someone is going through grief, when someone is going through a breakup, when someone is going through burnout, right? So we need mental models for, okay, she's burnt out. I'm going to lower my expectations of her because she can't be there for me right now, and I'm going to show up for her in this way. And then surely she will recover. She will. And then she will be back to the same friend. So I think we also have to be compassionate and forgiving in our relationships, which is what some people are not. But going back to your original question, which was, well, what if I just decide that this person is too triggering? I think we'll be triggered by everybody in our life at some point or another. Obviously, there are some people that are just far more triggering than others.
They're usually also family most of the time.
Yeah, and that's why you cannot cut from kin. In our religion, in our culture, you cannot cut from kin because they are there contracted to your soul to evolve you. If you continue to get triggered and you do the trigger and you do that, you're not evolving. So something has to change, some healing has to happen, so that one day you can sit from that person and they continue to be the same exact person, but you are not triggered. So you cannot do that if you just decide to go, live on top of a mountain somewhere. You must be a man of this world and your spiritual and soulful evolution. You cannot go and evolve spiritually while cutting from everyone in your life because they're low vibes or they're triggering. this is where a lot of that spirituality movement has gone, you know,
South.
yeah, somewhere. It's gone somewhere, which it should not go. But you must know how to be with the people in your life, because they are your responsibility. They have rights over you. Your parents have rights over you, your sister. And again, I'm not talking about any, you know, seriously abusive.
Yeah.
I'm talking about just your
normal triggering
family. Right? Exactly. And how do you heal from that, and how do you work through that while staying in relationship to these people? That is the task.
Yeah.
And like I said, if you are really burnt out, communicate. Tell them what you can and cannot do. If you are really burnt out, limit your interaction with triggering people, but that does not mean you cut from those people. That means instead of saying, I'm going to come for Saturday lunch, go for the tea.
Yeah.
And just say, I'm going to stop by for dessert or the tea time, but I won't be able to come for lunch. So you're still in it, but you're just touching and out. So you stay connected and you don't lose full connection with those people.
Yeah,
I think it's really important.
It is, yeah. As like a testimony to what you're saying, I at some point reached that burnout because there was just so much, not just on my plate, but also I was holding so much responsibility, and I got to a point where like, okay, I can't deal with my family anymore. I can't be there for them anymore because I haven't been there for me for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And that's when I thought living in a mountain in India will solve my problems.
Yes. Did you go?
I actually booked everything, and then COVID hit. And that was a sign.
And that was a sign. God gives you many signs.
And then someone told me, actually she was my mentor at the time, she told me, you're running away from your life. If you go there, that doesn't mean your problems are solved.
Yeah.
And she was right. I had to.
I didn't know the mountain story, by the way. Okay,
yeah,
this is so, like, you know, classic.
Yeah.
We think we can find peace up in the mountain. You will never find peace. The research also supports this. You must have a tribe.
Yeah.
You must have a tribe in order for you to live a happy life. In order for you to be happy, it is not fame, it is not money, it is not any of these things. It is people in your life that you can depend on now. Those people don't have to be your family. They have to be your tribe. However, if we go by our culture, if we go by our religion, these people have rights over you. It is not about what makes you happy and what makes you high vibes and low vibes. They have rights over you. How will you give them their rights and not cut from their kin and? So if you are going based off of culture, I'm talking South Asian, Arab, Muslim values, for these people, and also I just think if I speak spiritually, these are contracted people. You have been contracted on a soul level with the family you have come into this incarnation with, right?
Yeah.
If you cut from that, your lessons, they will show up as a boss, then they will show up as a husband, then they will show up as a friend. You cannot run from that.
True.
You must encounter, you must work through, you must heal, you must be with, rather than running. I think going to the mountain is a good idea. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But you can't live up there.
No.
You gotta come back. Even the prophet went into the cave.
True.
For a little while.
But came back also.
But came back. You know, so you gotta go into the cave. You've got to go inwards. You've got to withdraw. It's okay.
Yeah.
But communicate to the people, hey guys, I'm going in. And I used to actually use this terminology even as a teenager. I used to say, I'm going in my cave. And all my friends knew, she's going in, she's gonna come back out. I remember when I first married my husband, I told him, I'm gonna go in my cave. And he's like, what is this cave? How long will you be in this cave? When will you come out of this cave? And it was just like, let me be. It's where I go. And I would just withdraw. And I would work through things. And especially when I was emotional, I would work through things. I would feel. And then 4 days later, I'm out and I'm back. But it was almost like my wounds were too raw. I was too raw. I'm gonna hurt you if I'm here. So let me just retreat. I come back out. And this is where I learned about my recovery process. So I think it's really important. How long do I need to recover? When am I starting to get overwhelmed? What, you know, like these things are really important reflections
Yeah.
To create your kind of MO, your operating model for phases in your life. You know, 30 to 33, 33 to 36. Like, you can update this operating model faster, but at least for the next few years, how am I going to be? I've learned that when I'm really upset, I get very quiet. This would be an important thing to tell my friends. Hey guys, when I get really upset, I get really quiet, I withdraw. It has nothing to do with you. It's just that I need a few days. I promise I will come back out. And then everybody just lets you go be quiet. And then you come back out after 3 days.
And no hard feelings also.
And no hard feelings, because people know that that's just your process. So it's so important to communicate your process, but you cannot communicate that unless you've reflected on it.
Yeah.
Because you've been doing it a certain way, but
Yeah.
you just haven't figured out what that way is. So figure it out and communicate that to your partner, husband, friends, parents, and then things go a little bit, then you're not resisting, you know.
I think it's so important to reach that point, is to have some sort of like coaching or mentoring or therapy, or because it's very hard to reach to that point just by yourself. You need like an accountable partner to keep you accountable on how you're behaving when you're burnt out. Especially we women also, when we're married, we take it a lot on our partner, just because we're very comfortable communicating or behaving in certain ways, somehow, because it's like this relationship is always forgiving. He's not going anywhere. He's there. We take it for granted. And like, for example, when you receive a client who's burnt out, what tools do you give her to start with, so she can deal with this or avoid it?
The first thing will be to get the physical body in recovery. It's a bottom-up approach. How much are you sleeping? What are you eating? Where is your movement? How much sunlight are you getting? How much are you resting, which is not sleeping? How much downtime do you have in a day? How much are you connecting to the people that you love? Just, I'm going to do this in that kind of order, starting with sleep being the most important, and exercise and sunlight and food and stuff. So that's going to be the most important thing, is how strong is your body? I'm not even going to try to go into psychological tools or reflection when you are exhausted. You just imagine you're just gone through a battle. We're not going to do a proper analysis of the battle until you've recovered and your wounds are healed. Now, let's think, okay, what happened? How did you get here? So the physical body, thank God, it's very forgiving for quite some time, and then it stops being forgiving. But it would be very important to first get that online. And sometimes it takes 10 days. If you really just kind of reset yourself, it takes 10 days. Now, do you have to stop working? I think if you're truly burnt out, which a lot of times people use this term quite, oh, I was so burnt out, but then they like, you know, rest on the weekend and then they're not burnt out anymore. That is not burnout. Burnout is absolutely, you know, shut down. Burnout is like dead in the vagal, you know, polyvagal system. It's where you're in the dorsal vagal, where you've been in fight or flight for so long that now your body is like, oh, listen, man, this girl, she's gonna kill us if we don't play dead. Now the fight or flight has been consumed, so the next thing is play dead. That's burnout.
Wow.
So that is actually quite rare.
Yeah.
And you know, in the research, I think there's 114 or some, maybe 100, a lot, over 100 definitions of burnout. So nobody even knows what burnout is. You go to a cardiologist, he'll tell you something. You go to a psychologist, he'll tell you something. You go to a psychiatrist, he'll tell you something. There's no alignment in what the definition of burnout is. From my understanding and from my personal experience, it is when we hit the dorsal vagal. It is when you play dead. Your body says, shut it down. I don't care if you get fired. I don't care if he divorces you. I'm not engaged. I'm dead. I'm done. That is burnout. that you don't recover from it over a weekend. You need a 6-week recovery plan.
Yeah.
So when someone comes to me burnt out, first of all, they might not even make it to me because they're so burnt out. Burnt out usually can't even activate. It's usually their partner or their friend might say, listen, man, we need to get you somewhere, or their HR that will refer them.
Yeah.
Because they themselves can't problem solve at that time.
True.
So picking up the phone, making a call, that's, so if you feel burnt out, I would say to people is do bottom up. Take care of the physical body. Nurse yourself as if you just went in through a massive surgery. What would you do after a massive surgery?
Rest and recovery.
Rest and recovery. Become hyper vigilant about your sleep, about what you eat, how much you're hydrating. You've got to move, but not high intensity cardio.
Yeah.
This is just about gentle movements and gentle walks. You can't get your heart rate up too high because your heart rate can't, because you don't have adrenals, because you're exhausted. Like, all of that is what you're going to do. Soon enough, you will start to feel better, day 10, day 11, and then you pick up the phone and you call the psychologist and you say, I don't know how I got here. How did I get here? Because if you don't do a proper analysis, you will get here again, for sure. It happened to me. I'm a psychologist, but I was like, no, I'm bionic. I don't need sleep. I don't need food. I don't need. And I just thought it was like, okay, whatever. That was a fluke. And then it happened again. And I was like, oh, wait, I think I'm human. I didn't realize I have to sleep and eat. I was one of those people who thought I'll sleep when I'm dead. This is who I am. I literally didn't sleep for like a decade.
Wow.
It would go on like 3 hours of sleep. And I was like proud of it. Now I know better. I will never do that again. And I will never let my children think that way. I will never let anyone in my life think that way, because it's so, so critical. Sleep is not rest. Sleep is recovery. Sleep is integration. Sleep is healing.
Yeah.
Sleep is learning. All of that is happening during your sleep. So that's how I would kind of phase it out. But yeah, most important thing would be when it feels too close to your face, you can't see things. You need someone else to be like, hey, listen, you've got 5 things here that you need to tend to. And I have a therapist. My husband, my children, we all have therapists. And I just think it's a very important part of my development, of my self-care, of my self-awareness, of my capacity. And when I say capacity, meaning how do I show up as a woman? How do I show up as a woman in all my roles? I have to hold a lot, a lot. I will have less capacity if I have less self-awareness. So my self-awareness is literally making the tank of capacity bigger.
I love that you said, how can I show up as a woman? Because you can be a woman and not show up as a woman. It's just, it takes so much observation and like awareness to say it that way, because I thought I was showing up at certain times of my life for others, but I was showing up in a very masculine way. I was not showing up as a woman.
And toxic masculine, because I've seen beautiful masculinity.
Yeah.
I've seen divine masculine in men, but the culture is it actually promotes a very toxic kind of doing. You know, when we talk about masculinity, it's the doing function, right? And there are men that are doing it beautifully, and they're masculine, and they have a beautiful balance of masculine and feminine. They can collaborate, they can cooperate, they can be open, they can be influenced, and they're doers and they're achievers and. So they have this good balance of masculine and feminine. And then a lot of women have that. They have a femininity, which is a divine femininity, which is a beautiful blend of masculine and feminine, which is where the divine marriage happens internally. Now you have that divine marriage, you show up fully in your power as a man or as a woman. When it becomes toxic is when we go to the edges of this, where women and men, by the way, are pleasers. Now that's toxic femininity. pleasing and doing, loving and caring and giving. No, it's okay. Like, you don't have to, like, you have to do it with balance.
Yeah.
So asking and receiving, giving and taking, that's the balance of the masculine and feminine. And so I like to put that little asterisk by the toxic masculinity, because masculinity is not toxic. Masculinity is beautiful. And I have an inner masculine, and it is beautiful, and I thank God for it. And I have had the effects of toxic masculinity, where I was just doing, and not feeling and not being and not, you know, and that was not healthy. And the culture can sometimes promote that. Technology can reinforce that.
Yeah. And in those situations, how can men show up for their wife or their colleague or their sisters when they're in that place?
Which place?
The burnout place. Or maybe they are on the edge of burning out.
I think men or women. I think if you're living in a house with someone, sometimes when you're in the thick of it, you don't even know that it's happening. I've had I would say a bout of depression in my life while I was a psychologist. And I was in it, and I was almost like you're in survival mode, and you're just going through emotion, you're going through the motion. And then one day, I sort of stopped, and I thought, hold on a minute. This, oh my God, I'm depressed. I knew that because I have a psychologist mind, and you know, but I didn't even know I was depressed, and I was in the depression. So when you're in something, you don't have visibility as to what's going on with you. This is why people in our life are so important to be our mirrors and say, hey, Saliha, like, you know, I've noticed that you're really on edge these days. I've seen you get really angry, like you don't really do that often. Or I've noticed that, you know, you're not showing up to work on time, and you're always on time. Something where they start to say, have you noticed that? And many times you're just like, oh, really? I didn't even notice. And so I think highlighting to them that there are things that you're seeing, and then saying, listen, you seem really unhappy. You don't seem well. I really think we should get support. And let me help book the appointment. So you have to do the research, you have to find the person, you have to book the appointment, you might have to drive them to the appointment, you might have to sit in the room with them in the appointment, because they might be too exhausted to do any of these things. There are so many things that I have to do, and I'm like, oh, somebody just, can you give me a top 3 list? Somebody do the research. You know how much energy that takes?
Yeah.
It takes a lot of energy.
Yeah.
So I think doing that front end work, and then taking them in and sitting them in front of the therapist, that might be something. But obviously, like I said, have a physical recovery plan, and then do that.
Yeah.
So, hey, listen, you know what? We're going to call, you have 10 vacation days, you're going to take them now. You're going to take your vacation days, and you're going to, or if you have sick leave, or if you have, you know, burnout leave at work, like, time to talk to the HR. So your partner or your friend is going to highlight that for you, and then lay out the plan, because your cognitive abilities at that time are compromised. That's the definition of burnout. You're not thinking clearly. And at that time, to make a plan, you have to think very clearly. How can I do that when I'm not there? So the people that are in your life will have to do the thinking for you.
Yeah.
Do the thinking, do the planning, do the phone calling, and just ask them only to show up.
That's beautiful. Well, on top of women now wearing many hats, there's also our menstrual cycle that takes us on a roller coaster of hormonal changes that also affect how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about the surroundings, and how we react to things. Does that add or create more challenge for women to stay mentally healthy, to have like a balanced capacity throughout their month, especially that every week is completely different hormones, different phase for them.
It's so exhausting. You know, it's so exhausting being a woman. But you're right, every week is a different phase. And then you know, and then the last week. So it's like, but you know, thank God for science, because we didn't have any of this information when I was growing up, but now I can educate my daughter. Like, all right, track it and just know what phase you're in and know what you're going to be. Once you start living according to your flow, life becomes a lot easier. And once you educate the men and women in your life about the patterns of your flow, they also are like, okay, staying out of this one. Or then the communication happens. Then you don't take things personally. Then you have a higher obligation that, okay, here I come. Like, here goes the beginning of, you know, the more stressful times of my cycle. Then I know I need to up the care. I need to lower the stressors. I need to lower the stimulation. I need to go more into a hibernation. So once you start to go with your flow, you are not fighting the flow. You're not swimming upstream. You're kind of going with the flow of life. And so it's a really beautiful thing when you start to use it and not just be in it, but actually, like, now is the creative phase when you're ovulating and it's just energy and you have so much. And it's like, how do I maximize this? And then you can know that week you're going to get the work of all 4 weeks done, probably. And then the last week you can take it a little bit easier. So once you start calendar organizing according to your energy levels, I think it becomes a lot easier. Now, I'm not saying that you're not going to work and your boss is not going to ask you to do a project and, you know, while you're in your menstrual, you know, cycle, but you can plan accordingly. You know, when I gave birth, I didn't take any time off, even through my doctoral program. I gave birth on a Wednesday and I was back to school on a Monday, you know. So I was like, I gotta get through and I've got to stay engaged or I might never come back. So, but because I knew when I was due, I did all the homework and all the exams and all the papers and all the whatever I needed to do for the 6 weeks that were going to be remaining in the semester. So I planned everything up front and I had very little to do at the back end. So when you know your cycle, you plan according to that cycle, then it's not as taxing. It does require a discipline, though.
It does, yeah.
And that's not it. Like, it doesn't end there. Like, there's perimenopause, which can happen at 35, even younger for some people. And so that brings with it its whole set of issues. And that can go on for 12 to 15 years.
Wow. Can you tell us more
perimenopause, menopause, and I don't want to speak as an expert. I can just tell you that I'm in that stage of my life where you have to constantly be on top of, okay, well, I noticed a change here. What's going on? Or my mood is a little bit different now. Why am I reacting? It's like getting to know yourself all over again. It comes with its difficulties, but it comes with its gifts also. But it's a very taxing time for a woman to enter that stage. And most women think they're losing their mind. Most women think that they're depressed. Most women think they're anxious. Most women think that they have some problem when they're actually perimenopausal. And they haven't accounted for that. It's like being an adolescent all over again, where you have to get to know yourself all over again. Most women, because the doctors don't tell you, they just say, oh, you know, you're stressed, you're burnt out, you're depressed, you're anxious, but no one says, hey, have you gotten your hormones checked? Like, how is your estrogen? How is your progesterone? How is your testosterone? Like, nobody tells you that.
No.
You have to go in there informed with that. And thank God now there's a whole movement where women are being more educated about that phase in their life. But what you ask of yourself must change when you're in that stage of your life, when you're entering the, the closer to your 45 and above. You must reorganize your life in some way, which is why a lot of women 49 to 56 are the highest rates of depression, is because they're not necessarily jigging their life in any way. They're just operating as if they were 30. It's like, but you're not 30 anymore. True. You've got to update your iOS like every decade, and then in the 40s you got to do it twice, and in the 50s you got to do it twice. So who I was at 40 is not who I am at 45. Like,
yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense, because my mom is young now. She's 51 now. So as you talk about all of that, I'm reflecting on what she's been through. And she went through very deep depression, and she thought it was just due to her life circumstances. But
it all compounds at that time too. Midlife for women is a very difficult time. A very difficult time. Why? If they have teenagers, they're around that time. Young adults, the young adults have a lot of different problems, and you have to show up as a mother caring for their problems. You have elderly parents who also become elderly while your children are becoming teenagers or young adults. So now you are in the sandwich generation where you're caring for the elderly and you're caring for your children. And usually you've been married for a few years and your marriage is hitting that rocky spot, and your husband and you are not in that same place anymore. And are we in love, or do we not love each other? And that relationship needs to be renegotiated. Then the woman, who is so often defined by her physical looks, is she too fat? Is she too thin? Is she pretty? Is she not? Does she have gray hair? Does she have wrinkles? That starts to show up on your face and on your body. You start to, older women are, everything is anti-aging, so you feel like you are anti yourself. At that point, it's like, why anti-aging? Why can't we just talk about beautiful aging? But everything is like this fear of aging, and it's so loud in women. And on top of that, their career, if they are working women, also comes to a place where they have to make big decisions. Am I going to go up the ladder, or am I going to stay, or am I going to leave? And it's like the perfect storm. When a woman hits probably around 45, that happens. But it can happen earlier too. Midlife is not an age. Midlife is a stage. Midlife is when checklists are done and responsibilities have shown up. So for some people, midlife can happen at 40. Sometimes it can even happen at 35 for people, because they started having kids when they were 20.
True.
Right? And so
life started earlier for them.
And so this is kind of how you, but it's a very, very difficult time for women, but it is a very powerful time. This is when it's like their queen stage. You are coming into your queen stage, because the hormones that were childbearing hormones are decreasing, becoming almost next to nothing. But the hormone that is of wisdom is going to be there, and you have another capacity that opens up for you. So in matriarchal societies, like, women waited till once you hit menopause, now you have moved into another stage of your life where you don't do this stuff. Someone does it for you. So I think some of those old traditions we don't have, and maybe we don't want that. I don't want to just sit there and do nothing, but you do have to adjust your life to accommodate what the new phase of your life is asking you, which is a being phase, a receiving phase, rather than this doing that you have been doing up until that point.
It's so beautiful. I'm reflecting about everything that you're saying, about how you said like moving into that phase. I'm sure it's so hard on even kids to see their parents growing older, when they see like their joints now are hurting, and like they can like twist an ankle if they walk too much or they do like an activity, and it's just painful for them to watch their mother get to a place where she's weaker now physically, let's say, but she's doing her best to show up still the same way. And yeah, at some point, yes, my mom became a receiver in the family rather than the giver. And that can take different shapes, or so it can be financially, it can be emotionally, where we become her mother in a way.
Caregivers.
Yeah. And as you said, this now spirituality is taking us to a place where I think it goes against my values, because they say your children don't owe you anything. I don't like these posts when I see them on social media, because you can misunderstand them on so many levels. Or like you don't owe your parents money, or like to take care of them when they're older. It was their decision to bring you to life. It sounds so selfish and so individualistic. And now you're saying that when she steps into that age, into menopause, in certain cultures, if it's a maternal culture, she's now on the receiving end. She's now the queen.
She's the queen.
It makes so much sense now to me. And it kind of like, if everyone can adopt this, there would be so much peace between kids and the mother. Because even the kids don't understand. They still expect things from their mom.
Yeah.
But she's no longer showing up the same way, or like...
That's it.
And also, oh, you're from a different generation, and like, and you see the disconnect between both. But then when you adopt this way of thinking, it can make things so much easier for both. It's so beautiful.
It is beautiful, and these are where some of our traditions have served us for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Right? We lived in tribal communities, and everyone had a role, and elders played a role, and they were a very important part. Evolution would have eliminated us as soon as we became menopausal if procreation was the only reason women were alive, right? Evolution would have eliminated us. But no, they're alive for longer than that. Why? Is because they bring wisdom. Now they bring care for the grandkids, which is very different from the care of a mother versus a grandmother, you know? So we have to say, well, what is the role of a woman who is at this phase of her life? I am in no way saying you should stop working. I am in no way saying that you shouldn't be a contributing member of your society. I'm in no way saying that that is not the beginning of your life. I'm just saying it's a different phase, and your body has different needs, and you have different wisdom, and you can do something different with that rather than doing what you have always done. But most people are so afraid of the change. They're so afraid to let go of something. And I remember when the realization was coming to me, there was a profound grief that my youth is gone. Like I'm not young anymore. And I remember that sadness that came over me, and I was like, no, I'm young. It's like, no, you're not. Like, you are now in the next phase of your life, where you are in the middle age of your life. You are not in the youth of your life anymore. And there comes a huge amount of grief, but then also a huge amount of, okay, well, what now, right? What can I do with this? And I'm not affected by what people say to me anymore the way I was when I was younger. What people say about me is doesn't have the strong hold on me, because I'm now in the queen stage of my life. And then there will be, you know, and I consider myself in the elder stage, where I'm now in the elders. And now when my friends, when my son's friends come and they're like, auntie, I'm like, who are you calling auntie? I was like, oh, no, I'm an auntie. I am an auntie. Oh, man.
My mom is still working on that.
Oh, my God. It's really hard.
Yeah. But I don't know if you agree with that. Everyone is saying like I'm not assuming, but I'm just speaking of my mom, like 50 is the new 40 and like 60 is the new 50. Like,
I don't know what that means.
Me neither.
Yeah, 50 is 50 and 40 is 40. And if you keep going back to 30, then you are not growing forward.
Yeah.
This is a fear of age. 50 is not the new 40. 50 is the new 40 in the way we take care of ourselves. Maybe biologically we take care of ourselves, physically we take care of ourselves better than our parents did. But no, 50 is 50. And your clock is ticking and you will be menopausal by 52. Like, you can't stop the clock. And you will age and you will get wrinkles and you will have white hair, and you can say, I feel 40. Okay, I feel like I'm 12. But it's still, it's still 40. You're still going to be 40 when you are 40. You can say all sorts of things to deny. Or you can just accept that, no, I'm 40.
Yeah. With perimenopause and menopause, I'd love to hear more from you about, like before women used to get married and have children at a very young age, and now with, the evolution and us stepping into the corporate life, we're delaying that. We're delaying marriage, we're delaying having kids. And how does a woman deal with menopause or perimenopause, and she has like a 3-year-old child, let's say?
Yeah, I don't know. They do it, right? and I don't think we weren't designed that way. This is all new for us. We were not designed to do it that way. Of course, women were, women were having children until they were not, until they were menopausal. Like, there was no birth control or anything like that. But they started very early. They started when they were 12 or 13 or 14, right? So very young in the old days. And so at 16, you were ready to be married off. And in some villages, it was as soon as you had your menses, you were married. So, and I'm only talking several hundred years ago that this was happening. So what we are doing is actually, like, nobody really knows how this plays out. What do you do with that? Like, how will that child be when they are grieving the death of their mother at 20? Because the mother was 80, because they gave birth at 60 because they used something to give that birth. Like, when you are changing, when you are writing a new script, we actually don't know how this plays out. I actually don't know. Maybe there's research done out there, but I'm not familiar with it. I'm sure those mothers are far more grounded than a mother who, I had my first child at 27. And so, like, and my last child was at 36. And so, like, what she had was far less awareness than what this one had. But, I think they both turned out okay so far. But they had, when we say, oh, how can everybody in the family turn out so different? They had the same mother. No, they didn't. They didn't have the same mother. Because she's different every time she has a child.
I'm going to use that against my mom.
No, for sure. For sure. For sure she was not the same mother.
Yeah.
Because the second child has a different mother than the first child. And the last child has a different mother than the first child. For sure, I was 4 different mothers for 4 different children.
So beautiful. Wow. Well, we're going to be watching how it's going to turn out to be. I was personally I was holding so much fear from marriage and from having kids, and I was thinking career. And I think, as I told you, like, I reached a burnout where, like, I don't want to deal with family. I don't want to create a family. I didn't see, maybe I didn't see a happy version of a family. And so I was like, this is not for me, career. And so, but then, like, as I healed myself, I embraced and I saw the beautiful side of marriage, but still there's that fear of, I don't have kids, but now my husband and I are planning to have kids, but there's that fear of how am I gonna deal with with all the change, like how am I going to balance everything? And I hold so much admiration for women who are able to balance between being mothers, wives, and they're also successful at their career. You're there. And can you tell me your secrets?
I'm very disciplined. I'm very disciplined. Like, ask me for my Google Calendar and it will tell you what I'm doing on, June 7th. Like, it will be there. I watch my calendar like a hawk. I know my energy really well. So I know that on Monday, I'm really tired because the whole weekend I've been with family and I've done that. So on Monday I go low, and on Friday I go, like, there are things that I do on my calendar and the way I plan things which conserve energy. So I know on Tuesday I have my game face on. I will work all the way until 6 p.m. sometimes on Tuesday because I know that I'm ready, I'm charged, and then I do a little bit of recovery on Wednesday. So I move things around a lot. This is for someone who owns their own business and has a lot of responsibility. I say manage your schedule really well. I have a very supportive husband and I have a very supportive family. I would not be here if it wasn't for the men in my life, if it wasn't for the people who went to bat for me, if it wasn't for my mother, if it wasn't for my mom who came in and stayed with me for 6 months every time I had a child. Like, I had a supportive family. I did not do this alone. I have beautiful team members at work, and we're all really like supportive of each other. So we all go around and we say who can hold more, who needs to hold less, and we share amongst each other. So that has also been a gift that I think when you make the intention, things align. I really believe in that. And God has given me also kids that are cooperative. Of course they're kids and they make me crazy, and I will surely go yell at one of them now. But they're cooperative for the most part. When I say there's no social media, they don't do so. Like, I have to do a lot of convincing and teaching and coaching and all of that, but they listen and they trust me and they know that I'm not just saying that. Of course they're going to be rebellious in certain areas, and I have space for that. So I think it's a dynamic between us that I was a very rebellious child. I was a handful. And so I have a way of parenting my children that they seem to cooperate with me because I think I give them a lot of leeway to rebel. But they're good kids, they're considerate of me. If I say, guys, I'm really like not, they'll just be like, okay. I really lay off and go into your corners. So I think building a village, having a discipline, having a commitment, doing what you love. I think for me, like, I was in marketing before. I took a left. I did my undergrad in anthropology. I was going to go into business. I was working in the field of business, and I was just like, this is not me. I cannot do this. And so that's when I went into psychology. But if I was doing something that was difficult, then it would be harder for me to show up for work. I would still do it. I think there are some things you got to pay the bills and you got to show up, right? But I think it would take more from me. And then I would have less to give to other things. Maybe I would have just had 2 kids at that point. But I was able to have 4 because I was doing what I loved and I had a supportive, so it kind of plays into each other. And I'm just very stubborn also, like really stubborn. I like to say committed. Yes. When my mom used to say stubborn, I was like, that's just perseverance, commitment, fortitude. It's like, no, I'm not stubborn. But there is a way, but it does take work. It's not easy. It is not easy. And even if they're making it look easy, and if I make it look easy, let me just correct everybody here. It is not easy. And there are many days where I have said, I quit. And then the next day I get up and I do it again. And it is a life you choose. Will you choose this life? And once you do, it's gonna be hard. So nothing about it is easy. Parenting is not easy. Being a daughter is not easy. Marriage is not easy. Work is not easy. Even if you love what you do, there will be periods where you say, shut it down, close it up, I don't want it. And then you show up again because you have a good why. I think if your why is clear and your calling is clear, I think you get through the difficult periods.
Yeah, beautiful. With your experience with the Lighthouse and being a psychologist, are women more keen to approach therapy than men?
Women are just more socialized than men. Men, there's a lot more stigma, and men also don't have the language to engage in therapy as easily. They are not taught to talk about their feelings. When a boy hurts himself, come on, be a boy, get up, get on with it. When a girl falls, oh, honey, what happened? You know, like we do these things with a girl that we don't do with a boy. We shut the boy down. The boy doesn't have feelings. The boy doesn't have the language to communicate. This is what I'm going through. This is what went on for me. They don't think like that. And they don't have people in their life doing that. A girl is socialized by watching her aunties, and you know, he did this to me and I did this to her and she did that to, you know, that person. The socialization is happening about communication. Boys don't have that. So it's harder for them to actually get the support, but there's also a lot more stigma for men. They'd rather die than to talk about their feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean that in like a literal sense. Like suicide rates for men is very high because they'd rather die than to talk about their feelings. But it's changing, and I'm hopeful. And I have a lot of men that I work with, and a lot of influential people in position type of men. So there is hope, because when those, you know, when the top of the management starts to change, then it trickles down faster. So times are changing.
I hope that means we will have less war, less conflict between countries.
Yeah.
When we have more healed presidents and more healed politicians.
Yeah, we've got some ways to go.
Yeah. I'd love to end this interview with a topic that is dear to every woman, which is beauty. And I would love to know from you, in a way to end this beautiful interview, on what beauty means to you, and how did you teach your daughters how to feel beautiful, what beauty meant for them? Because we're so open on social media, right? Beauty can take so many meaning, and it's very hard to be grounded with the expectations of beauty or perfection in the physical realm.
That's a really tough question, actually. What does beauty mean? When I talk about physical looks and physical health with my daughters, and the way I have always approached it with myself, for me, it's really about who you are as a person, how you show up in a room, how do people feel around you, do they feel your love, do they feel your care, do they feel your kindness? That's beautiful. I've seen the most physically beautiful human beings, but I have not felt they were beautiful. So maybe beauty is a feeling for me. It's a feeling that you emanate. It's a sense that you emanate. It's a presence that you have that is truly beautiful. I tell them to have a beautiful mind. I tell them to have a beautiful energy. Really focus on these things, because that's what shows up in your eyes, and it shows up in your conversations and in your relationships. And that's the beauty that's going to last and only grow with time.
I read a study that women perform better when they're leaders if they were confident about their bodies. That was men don't care. Men don't have that. They will perform as leaders either way, whether they're like physically fit or not. But women, they notice that they perform better as like managers or like business owners when they feel, or when they're when they're not obese or like they're overweight and they feel great in their shape. And that was just like interesting to me, because I can see how the physical shape can affect women's also mental health.
Well, it's their self-perception. I think you have to work on your self-perception. You have to be physically healthy.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's about body positivity is great, but you have to be physically healthy. You have to eat right. And then we all come in different shapes and sizes. And we have to accept that we're all not going to look like a runway model. But are you eating healthy? Are you giving your body the nurturance it needs? Are you drinking? Are you sleeping? Are you walking? Are you exercising? If you're doing those things and there is self-acceptance, you will show up in your full power. I think then you will not be as influenced by the image. Of course, we all are like, oh man, well, look at her. Like, of course you can admire beauty when you see it, but you will still see yourself as beautiful too, because you have that awareness and that care and that relationship with your own physical body. I think that's really important. Do you have a relationship with your body, or are you like a abusive dictator with your body? If you are, you're not going to show up confident at work. But if you have a loving, supportive relationship with your physical body, sure, you'll show up.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Saliha. It was an honor. It was a milestone for Lead with Lipstick to host you, honestly.
Thank you.
And I hope everyone is in awe when they hear this podcast or this interview. You just opened my eyes on so many things, and I'm very excited for everyone to hear it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course.